honestly thought The Devil Wears Prada 2 was going to be a disaster. After all this hype, all the nostalgia, 20 years later, the huge marketing campaigns, I was well prepared for disappointment, especially after movies like Barbie, where the marketing was kind of bigger than the movie itself. But surprisingly, I actually enjoyed it. Is it as iconic as the first movie? No. Of course not. I think we all expected it, but it's nowhere near as bad as I expected or feared it to be. And what really interested me, apart from the outfits of course, was what this movie accidentally or not so accidentally revealed about the state of fashion. Because the first movie was clearly a fantasy. It made us dream about maybe working in fashion. This one, not so much. It's more a commentary on the current collapse of fashion authority. And just very briefly, some housekeeping here. This is a non-sponsored video. I'm just sharing my personal opinion and my research here. Everything I say is alleged and for entertainment purposes only. The first Devil Wears Prada, despite all the negative sides that they showed about the fashion industry, they made fashion seem magical. All these outfits, even 20 years later, I think a lot of them are still very cool, very current. I would wear a lot of them today. This movie is a bit different. This may be intentional. If you have followed the build-up to the movie and also all the photos that were leaked from the sets, I did another video about this, then we pretty much knew all the outfits. Nevertheless, I went to the movie with my notebook thinking I will see so many additional outfits. That was pretty much it, but still there were some standout moments, maybe not from the main characters. I very much liked the styling of Nigel. I already liked him in the first movie. This one is an even more polished version because I think in the first movie he was a bit nerdy. You could see that he very much respects Miranda as an authority. He knows the ropes at runway. He still does all of this, but he looks a bit more, even more sophisticated. So I loved, of course, the three-piece suits. The glasses looked amazing. And what I really appreciated were actually the details, because when you zoom in on a lot of these outfits, so at first, you can't really see how many patterns and colors each individual outfit has. But this is because they work so well together. So at first it's this Gesamtkunstwerk, if you want to talk like an art historian, that is a bit OTT. But you see the overall image of the suits and the outfits. And then when you zoom in, it's actually a lot of patterns that if I went to a shop and saw them next to each other, I'm not sure if I actually would pull them together like this. But it worked so well. And I think one detail was that if you had a suit and there was a little detail, maybe some blue color, it was picked up somewhere else. So in the end, it was not some random patterns and colors put together. It was a system and it looked really, really good. My personal favorite was Amari. I think she had really cool outfits. It was this mix. On the one hand, she can look super elegant, then she wears really cool boots, then she looks edgy. So there was so much difference in all of these outfits. Unfortunately, I expected her to be a bit more prominent in this movie because she is the new Emily. I would have appreciated if we had seen more of her, not only in terms of the role and the story, but also the outfits. One really interesting detail when Andy comes back into the office and tells Miranda and Nigel that she's going to work with them, Amari stands next to her and she wears an outfit that reminded me of the 2003 Chanel dress that Andy was wearing in the first movie. So I think that might have been a clever bridge to that first movie. As I said, I would have loved to see much more of her. I think there were so many amazing outfits and sometimes you only got a glimpse. There was this beautiful gown that you only saw from the top when she was running. So I would have really appreciated to see her more. The whole thing may have been intentional. She is Emily 2.0, but she's different. Emily in the first part was not only sophisticated, she knew how to work with Miranda. And yes, she freaked out every time when Miranda needed something from her, but she got the job done. And in the end, she also kind of made it feel effortless. With Amari, it seems the same, but still she feels a bit more maybe quiet. She very often has the strategy of just pointing at Miranda when Miranda makes another comment that is not okay to say anymore. She's not really loud. She doesn't roll her eyes. She's very much taken back. I think that might just be the character. But as I said, I would have loved to get to know Amari more. Andy's outfits, they make sense, but overall I found them a bit forgettable. And I already mentioned in the previous video that I assume that the styling is also a different Andy. Andy after a runway when she probably became a journalist, and she did exactly that. She became an award-winning journalist, so this is also reflected in her style. Of course, she's not gonna dress like the ladies at runway, that's clear. but at the same time, it's a bit more of a polished version of Andy. There is a bit of a twist. Apparently, the costume design team also wanted to make it a bit more realistic. I saw an interview with Molly Rogers, the costume designer, where she emphasized this. So I appreciate the approach, but overall, I felt that a lot of these outfits then were a bit boring or forgettable, because when I now think about the movie, and now it's about 2 weeks that I've seen it, I remember the blue Rabanne dress where also the makeup was really on point, and then I remember this weird Mondrian style colorful dress that she wears when she goes to the beach house. So realistic, great, but it could still be exciting. Maybe the Andy in the first part was not as realistic, but also here she goes into the runway closet and she gets some outfits. So it could have been a bit unrealistic. And speaking of unrealistic, there was one thing that I found actually a bit inconsistent. So in one of the first scenes where she's back at runway, she tells Nigel that she wears Margiela. And at the same time, she lives in an apartment that's falling apart. And only because of that job at runway can she afford a better apartment. So I'm like, you're standing here, you're wearing Margiela, we all know the prices, but then still you live in an apartment where you don't have proper water. So yeah, realistic on the one hand, on the other hand, then there were things like that. So I would have then said, okay, go a bit more unrealistic, use the closet a bit more, give us something a bit more exciting, because then maybe I wouldn't have noticed the Margiela so much. Because obviously, if she has to explain it to Nigel, it's not from the closet, so it was hers. So this was a detail that kind of bugged me. Also, compared to the first movie, there was much less Chanel. This might be also connected to who else sponsored that movie, because there was another luxury brand who heavily sponsored that movie, obviously. They even had kind of like their own role in the movie. I will talk about this in a bit. So there might be a reason. They used more American designers like Gabriela Hearst, a lot of Gabriela Hearst. Yeah, it was a bit boring. At the same time, I do have to say I appreciated that the movie didn't turn out to be something like Emily in Paris or And Just Like That. And as you may know, Molly Rogers was also the stylist of And Just Like That. So I was already sitting there like, what is going to happen? Is it going to be as ridiculous as a lot of outfits in And Just Like That? But actually, I think overall it was quite a good job. Miranda again gave us some standout looks. I think in addition to Nigel and Amari, she was one of my favorite characters in terms of the fashion. I really appreciated the Schiaparelli blazer, also the Schiaparelli padlock heels. I loved her belts and also the Dries van Noten coats. I think they were absolutely beautiful. But again, something felt different, and I could not really say what it was while watching the movie, but afterwards when I talked to my friends, they all said like, why were there so many sequins on Miranda? Looking back, there were quite a few of these outfits. I did not mind them, but obviously it was a lot. Miranda also herself in this movie, when it comes to the storyline, feels different. Miranda feels a bit softer, a bit more approachable, less terrifying. And this is very different from the first part, because this completely changed the energy of that whole movie. Because in the first part, Miranda was the industry. She was the authority. People were terrified of her. And in this movie, she's the one waiting for calls. She needed HR coaching, and she even has to hang her own coats. And I think this was quite a funny detail, because there's one scene where one of the assistants says like, oh, there are rumors that Miranda used to throw coats at assistants, and Andy has to smile. So obviously this has changed. Miranda needs to not only do it herself, she also had to work on how she treats other people. And also, as I mentioned in my other video, they substituted the fur coats for coats from different materials, which I actually appreciated very much. And that one small scene actually tells us a lot about the fashion industry overall. Because what is this movie actually about? The movie is about tech taking over fashion. And this is not a storyline that's unique to that movie. It's actually taken from real life. Because underneath the personal storyline between the characters and the outfits, what is this movie actually about? It is a reflection of the current state of the fashion industry. Because what's happening there? Tech companies have slowly made their moves into the industry without a lot of people actually realizing this. And a very good example is the Met Gala, which just happened roughly at the same time as this movie was launched. Because when we look at who bought the tables and tickets for the Met Gala, and this is nothing new this year, this has already happened over the past years. When we look into the companies, we have ChatGPT, Shopify, who bought tables. We also had Mark Zuckerberg attending the Met Gala this year, and also most famously, which also caused a lot of criticism, was that Jeff Bezos and his wife Lauren Sanchez Bezos donated a huge amount to the Met Gala this year and also attended. There are also rumors that Jeff Bezos has been looking at Condé Nast or Vogue as a gift for Lauren Sanchez Bezos. And this was exactly Emily's storyline, because she is now dating this tech tycoon who has no interest in fashion, or doesn't seem to have any interest in fashion, and she's driving the whole thing, and then he buys runway for her as a gift so that she can run it. So we can see the parallels. And then also what was really interesting to see is that it's actually a crowd that we don't necessarily associate with fashion, because when we think about all these tech founders, do we think about their fashion sense? Not really. We think about the hoodies and that they just want to look cool, but you may have seen a shift in this attitude in tech towards fashion, because I think they see the industry as a huge potential for them, a huge market. Also, as I said in my previous video, they see it as a way of positioning themselves to other people, of framing themselves. And in the movie, it's not only Emily's boyfriend representing these tech bros, it's also Irv's son, who later takes over, and he has all these new approaches, and of course he shows up in performance wear. So it's completely different to Miranda, and he wants new things, he wants this tech, and then he also brings in the consultants. McKinsey sit there, they talk about restructuring, and then the whole thing starts going. Miranda has to fly economy class, all of these things that have been happening in fashion, and it shows that the authority within fashion has actually shifted. So this is fashion industry overall, but also Condé Nast and Vogue specific, because when you look at the storyline, what happens in the movie is actually what has happened at Vogue over the past months, because in September last year, Chloe Mal took over as editor-in-chief of Vogue. So she replaced Anna Wintour. She previously headed Vogue.com, so she has a strong digital focus. She understands how the industry has changed, maybe more than Anna Wintour did. Anna Wintour became Global Chief Content Officer for Condé Nast. Some people say she was being pushed into this role because Vogue needs to be younger, they need to be more digital, but at the same time, some people also assume it might be another power move, that Anna Wintour moved up the ladder and she just used somebody like Chloe Mal, who is also a mentee of hers, to basically do what she wants her to do. So there are two theories on that. But what I found interesting is how close the storyline actually matches what was going on at Vogue. So even the two titles, Anna Wintour, Global Chief Content Officer for Condé Nast, and Miranda's title after the promotion that she's going after would be Head of Global Content. So I don't think this is a coincidence. And sometimes I have to say it felt less reality inspired. It actually felt a bit like copy paste. So I do have to say, for somebody who works in fashion, it was quite predictable, a bit boring. I don't know how it felt for people who don't have a background in the fashion industry. I watched a movie with people who have very different backgrounds, so some of them did not notice that much. So I would like to know what you thought about it. Did you feel it was too literal, too much copy paste? Let me know in the comments below. The story of the first part was just too good. It gave us this sneak peek behind the scenes into the fashion industry at the time, 20 years ago. We did not know much. This was still the time of print. It was before social media. We did not really know what was going on. I was also interested in that because at the time I was thinking about working in the industry. I did not really know much except the things that I learned from magazines like Vogue, or the few people I knew who had somehow entered the industry. And I think that made it interesting, not only for people who wanted to work in fashion, but also for the people outside, because it revealed this whole drama in the industry. This part, I have to say, is less, I think, interesting in terms of the storyline. It just felt a bit like predictable and planned. And I also have to say the story among the characters was a bit like, yeah, okay, but definitely not like in the first movie, where you also had the tension and also more the stories of the characters and how they developed over time. I think the reason why a lot of the reactions to the movie are mixed is because that movie feels different for one specific reason, and this is Miranda. Miranda no longer feels untouchable, and this is intentional because the industry has changed. An editor-in-chief of a fashion magazine does not have the same power as they had 20 years ago. Some magazines still do. I'm not gonna talk down the power of these big magazines, but it has changed, and we have seen that. I did another video where I talked about Vogue and all these magazines, how they changed over time. They also are facing fierce competition from online magazines, social media, influencers or content creators. I think the field has just broadened a lot, and I think they wanted to show that Miranda is not this uber authority of the industry anymore. But I'm not sure if the movie kind of overdid it, because in the first part we all feared Miranda. She was untouchable. She also said things that were not okay back then, not okay today, and this is also shown in the movie, that she can't say certain things, how she treats certain people. So I think this is good because it also shows how the industry or society overall has changed over 20 years. She was this terrifying person, but at the same time, we have to admit it ourselves, a lot of us actually wanted to be like her. The scene in the first part where she says everybody wants to be like us, live our lives, yes, it's exaggerated and it's ridiculous in the movie, but it kind of is true. We all oscillated between hating Miranda but then also admiring her for what she has achieved. And in this movie, yes, they softened her, but it made her look a bit helpless, sometimes like I had the feeling like a boring grandmother who doesn't know what to do. Like when she says, oh, I have to wait for Earth to call me. I think she can still be an updated version of Miranda, still a bit terrifying, more politically correct, or how she treats the people. But at the same time, she can be a strong character who still plays her game. When we think about the first movie where she did the whole scheme on her own to keep her in power, I don't think this has changed in 20 years. So this was a point where I'm still thinking about. In addition to that, the cameos in this movie were wild. When we think of the first movie, a lot of people did not want to collaborate with the team because they were fearing Anna Wintour. We know that has changed. She actually actively supported this movie, and this movie felt that everybody wanted to be part of it. So we see people from the fashion industry, Brunello Cucinelli, Marc Jacobs, also Laura Roach. So maybe these people are more for the fashion industry insiders. Then we also have Wisdom K, for example, who stands for this new digital age also in fashion. Then there were also non-fashion related cameos like comedian Ronnie Chang. So yeah, when you saw the list at the end of the movie who actually participated in it, Donatella Versace, all these people, Heidi Klum. So of course this was a big thing 20 years later, much more than 2006. While it is funny, and I was also sitting like, oh, this is Laura Roach and this is Ronnie Chang, da 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 da. So this can be a lot of fun, but at the same time it feels a bit that the movie has to prove itself to everyone how relevant it has become. I don't really think a lot of these things were that necessary, because we already know that that movie has become super, super relevant and a classic. And then of course also the marketing partnerships were insane. I already mentioned before, a luxury company heavily sponsored this movie. We are talking here about Dior, where Emily works. It's kind of like Dior got their own role in the movie. It's such a prominent role. So this was one. The other thing that I noticed immediately was Maybach Mercedes, because I don't know if this was the case in every country, but where I watched it, there was a Mercedes Maybach commercial before the movie, and then you also had the cars in the movie. So these were the two things that I immediately noticed. And there were so many others, I can't even list all of them, but there was also L'Oreal, Samsung, Coke. Then there were these licensing deals with Walmart or Tweezerman, for example. Now I saw Stanley Tucci also partnered with TJ Maxx. TJ Maxx is also mentioned in the movie. Look what TJ Maxx dragged in. So we already see how big the sponsoring of this movie actually was. And this is the big difference to the first movie, because in 2006 a lot of people did not want to collaborate because they feared Anna Wintour. Now it has become this huge cultural phenomenon. So many people talk about this. And then a friend of mine made a comment which I would like to share with you, because I think it's quite a valid one. When we look at 2006, quite a small production, an unknown movie, and then it blew up. And then in 2026, we have this huge cultural phenomenon. But maybe in 2006, because of the smaller budget, the fewer collaborations, they had to be more creative. And this was what made the movie so good. Maybe this was the secret ingredient. And just one last thing about this, the support by Anna Wintour and all of these brands 20 years later actually shows how the fashion landscape has changed and how the influence of other media in that fashion industry has also changed. Overall, I think The Devil Wears Prada 2 was less about a fashion fantasy, it was about the loss of the fashion mystique. The first movie opened the door to a very secret industry. The second one basically shows us that fashion is like any other industry. It has become more transparent, it's very corporate, it can be a bit boring, it is influenced by tech, it is sponsored, and competition is fierce. And maybe all of these factors made that movie a bit more somber than the first part. But still, there were some messages that I really liked. For example, Nigel finally gets appreciated by Miranda. Then also the message that you don't need a patron. And then also when Miranda says, yes, there were things that she had to sacrifice for her career, but she just loves to work. And I actually really appreciated that she said that openly, that it's not this fairy tale that everything comes easy. Yes, she made sacrifices, she was very successful, and she actually loved it, and she's okay with it. And I really appreciated that. Despite the criticisms, I enjoyed watching it. Is it a movie that I'm going to watch over and over again like the first one? I don't think so. My personal highlight was Lady Gaga. I really loved that. But I'm still not over a few things. What happened to Nigel? Did he become the editor-in-chief of Runway? Because at the end we see the building, so obviously Andy is working with them, Miranda has been successful and Nigel is there, but what happened? I want to know. What is this whole boyfriend situation? So, okay, the one from the first part is gone. There was actually a really hilarious commercial by Starbucks with him. I recommend that you watch it because it's really funny. And then there's this new potential boyfriend, and what really bugged me about this is not this lack of romance, it was more that her friend still keeps looking for a partner for Andy, which is nice for a friend, but at the same time I was like, does Andy really need a boyfriend? Maybe she's happy where she is. Does she need a friend who helps her? Because it feels a bit forced, especially for somebody who tells her other friend Emily that she does not need a man, she does not need a patron. So why is this whole storyline again about Andy finding a partner? I think this whole storyline we could have just cut from the whole movie. I don't think it would have changed the movie. I would have appreciated a storyline where this having a partner is not such a big focus. And then lastly, what happened to Miranda's daughters? So obviously she has a new partner, but we don't see the daughters at all. And now 20 years later, they would be at an age where they could have potentially entered fashion, or what did they end up doing? I think this would have been a really funny storyline that could have been taken up. So these are my 2 cents on The Devil Wears Prada 2. I'm really curious what you think about it. Let me know in the comments below. Did you like it? Did you hate it? What did you think about the outfits, the references to the state of the fashion industry? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't done so already. If you prefer to read about fashion, I have a lot of articles on my website, thepinklookbook.com, and if you like, you can also check out my fashion label Pelagona. And if you enjoyed this video about The Devil Wears Prada 2, I have another video which may be interesting for you. Thank you very much for joining me in this video, and see you in the next one.